Let's get started with this video of all the basic Sudoku techniques explained in 15 minutes. First, to familiarize ourselves with Sudoku, I want you to watch this one that is almost complete and it only needs 3 numbers. How do we know that it's almost complete? Very easy, because we can go through all the rows that are complete and check that each one has the numbers 1 to 9. For example, this one has all the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 without repeating themselves throughout the row. And the same goes for the columns. I can check any of them, for example this one, and confirm that it has the numbers 1 through 9 without repeating themselves. And the same goes for the 3x3 boxes. I can check this one, for example, and again, it has all the numbers 1 through 9 without repeating themselves. That's what Sudoku is all about. We're initially going to be given a 9x9 grid with lots of blank spaces, and we have to manage to fit the numbers 1 through 9 without repeating themselves in all the rows, columns, and boxes. But going back to the initial Sudoku, if we manage to correctly place those 3 missing numbers, then we'll have finished it. And to do that, we're going to learn the first technique, the full house. If in a house, that is a row, column, or box, only one square is missing, you can complete it by placing the missing digit. So it's very simple. In this entire row, only the number 9 is missing, so we place it. In this box, the number 2 is missing, so we place it. And in this column, only the number 3 is missing. We place it, and look how with this, we finished the first Sudoku, but we also learned the basics, and now you know the first basic technique. But as you can imagine, not all Sudokus are as simple as the one we just saw, and that's why we're going to do another one in which I'm going to teach you all the basic techniques that are missing. First of all, you have to know that when a Sudoku is more difficult, something that helps a lot to solve it is to know at all times which numbers can go in each cell. For example, let's focus on the first cell of the first box and let's ask ourselves if we can place the numbers 1 to 9. Can the number 1 go there? No, because there's already 1 in the same column. Can the number 2 go? No, for the same reason. Can the number 3 go? No, because there's already a 3 in the same row and in the same box. Can the 4 go? No, because there's already 1 in the same row. Can a 5 go? And yes, in this case, there's nothing stopping a 5 from going in. So let's write a little 5 with a pencil like this and we continue. Can the 6 go? Yes, nothing's stopping us. So we're going to write it like this. Can the 7 go? No, because it's in the row and in the column. Can the 8 go? No, because it's in the box and in the column. And finally, can the 9 go? Yes, so we'll write that 9 too. So we have the numbers 5, 6, and 9 in the first cell. Those numbers are called candidates, and what we've just done is written down all the candidates that can go in a cell. That's called making pencil marks, which are made with a pencil precisely because we're going to erase them over time, but it's necessary to make them in order to have all the possible information about our Sudoku and thus start making decisions based on logic. So I'm going to make all the pencil marks for the Sudoku before we continue, and now let's go through all the basic techniques starting with the easiest one, the naked single. If a cell only has one candidate, then that number must go in that cell. Right now, that's happening in this cell. For whatever reason, after we've made all the pencil marks, that cell only has one candidate, the number 5. And since there's no other number that can go there, we can mark it. But be careful, since we have just put a number, it's likely that something has changed in the other pencil marks. Look at these cells that also have the number 5 as a candidate, that are in the same house as the number 5 that we've just put in. Those candidates don't make sense anymore because it's no longer possible for another number 5 to go in any of those cells. So because we discovered that there's a number 5 here, we can erase the number 5 candidates that are in the same house, whether it's in the same box, in the same row, or in the same column. Never forget, when you enter a number, also delete the candidates that conflict with that number. And with this, you have already learned what the naked singles are, so let's learn the next technique, the hidden single. But before I teach it to you, remember that my book Mastering Sudoku Basic Level has a detailed explanation of each of the techniques that we will see in this video. And not only that, but each technique has special Sudokus that will help you put into practice everything you are learning right away. In addition, you'll find a lot of Sudokus of all the difficulties that you can solve with the techniques learned, so that you can play, have fun, and learn to master Sudoku. The links to download it are as always in the description or in the pinned comment of this video. I know you will love it, and also that way you can support the channel. So get it, and now I will explain to you what the hidden single is all about. If a number within a section can only be in one box, that number can be placed there regardless whether that box has more candidates. Let's see it with this example. Let's say we are analyzing row 1 and we see that although all the cells have several candidates, only one of them has candidate number 8. That 8 is a hidden single because although it is the only place in the row where it can be placed, if we look at the cell, we will find that it is hidden among other candidates and it may be more difficult to see. But with practice, you will be able to find many candidates like this. And of course, each time you see one, you can place it with confidence. Now, I'm not going to place all the hidden singles that are currently in the Sudoku, but you can practice by pausing the video and understanding which is the hidden single of the cells that I am highlighting. And with this, you already know the hidden singles technique, which is the last technique that helps us place numbers. When Sudoku puzzles get more complicated, you have to use more advanced techniques that no longer have the objective of having you place a number, but rather help you discard and eliminate candidates. You will see that the more candidates you discard, the more you will be able to use the naked single and the hidden single techniques, and thus be able to advance. That is why I'm going to teach you the locked candidates pointing technique, which, as I said, will no longer help you place numbers, but rather to eliminate candidates using logic. It works like this. When in a box, all the candidates of the same number are on the same row or column, then that candidate cannot be present anywhere else in that row or column. So, in order to explain this technique, you first have to learn how to find locked candidates. And to do so, you have to check each of the boxes and see if you come across a situation like this, where in the same box, all the candidates for the same number, in this case 3, are aligned in the same column. So when we eventually put the number 3 in that box, it doesn't matter if it's here or here, it's always going to occupy that column. So there can't be any other 3 in that entire house. And that's why we can delete these candidates with the number 3 from the same column that are in another box at once. That's what the locked candidates are all about. And for you to practice, I'm going to point out the other places where there are locked candidates, which are here, here, and here. Look at them carefully and think about which candidates can be deleted thanks to using this technique. Now, the inverse technique to locked candidates pointing is called locked candidates claiming. When in a row or a column, all the candidates of the same number are on the same box, then that candidate cannot be present anywhere else in that box. It's exactly the same as the locked candidates pointing, only now we are not going to look at boxes, but rows and columns until we find one like this, where in the same row, all the candidates of the same number, in this case number 2, are at the same time inside the same box. So when we eventually put the number 2 in that row, it doesn't matter if it's here or here, it's always going to occupy that box. So there can't be any other 2s there. So these candidates with the number 2 in the same box can be eliminated all at once. That's what locked candidates claiming is all about, and for your practice, I'm going to point out another place where this happens so that you can think about how the technique can be used there and which candidates can be eliminated. With that, we can move on to the next group of techniques, naked subsets. This encompasses 3 techniques, which are naked pairs, naked triples, and naked quadruples. Let's talk about naked pairs first. If there are 2 cells in a house that only have the same 2 candidates, then those 2 candidates can be eliminated from the other cells in that house. To understand this technique, we first need to find a naked pair. As the definition says, a naked pair is 2 cells within the same house that have exactly the same 2 candidates. For example, we have one here. Both cells are in the same row and both have exactly the same 2 candidates, 1 and 6. Now let's think. What happens if we discover that the cell on the left is a 1? Well, the cell on the right only has the possibility of being a 6. And what happens if we discover that the cell on the left is a 6? Well, the opposite. The box on the right only has the possibility of being a 1. In other words, one of the cells is necessarily going to be a 1 and the other is going to be a 6. And although we don't know which is which, what the technique says is that if any other cell within that row has a 1 or a 6 as candidates, as happens here, we can eliminate them. And this is because the 1 and the 6 are destined to be in one of the two cells of the naked pair. So we're going to eliminate those other candidates. Make sure to understand how naked pairs work before continuing, because the ones that follow are basically the same but with more numbers. For example, naked triples. If in a house there are 3 cells that only have the same 3 candidates, then those 3 candidates can be eliminated from the other cells in that house. In other words, the same as pairs, but now with 3 cells and 3 candidates. And to learn how to use it, again, we first need to learn how to find naked triples. In this Sudoku, we can see one here. Here are 3 cells within the same house that only have the same 3 candidates: 1, 2, and 9. Note that it is not necessary for all 3 cells to have all 3 candidates. Here's one that only has 1 and 2, for example, but since the rule that only the same 3 candidates are found among those 3 cells is still fulfilled, it is valid. And the same thing happens with pairs. In the end, one of those cells will have a 1, another a 2, and another a 9. So it makes no sense for any other cell in that column to have any of those candidates. That is why we can eliminate candidates 1 and 9 from this cell. With this, you now understand what naked triples are, and we can move on to the last naked subset, naked quadruple. If in a house there are 4 cells that only have the same 4 candidates, then those 4 candidates can be eliminated from the other cells in that section. As you can see, it's exactly the same idea as pairs or triples, but now 4 cells are involved. In this Sudoku, we can see a naked quadruple here. Those 4 cells are within the same house and only have the same 4 candidates: 1, 5, 6, and 9. Again, not all 4 cells have all 4 candidates. Here is a cell that only has 5, 6, and 9, and here another that only has 1, 5, and 9. But since the rule that only the same 4 candidates are found among those 4 cells is still fulfilled, it is valid. And the same thing happens with pairs and triples. In the end, one of those cells will have the 1, another the 5, another the 6, and another the 9, so no other cell in that row can have those candidates. That's why candidates 1 and 6 in this cell can be deleted. With the naked quadruples, you already know all the naked subsets that are easy to discover if you have all the pencil marks of your Sudoku puzzle made. And with this, you are one step away from knowing all the basic techniques of Sudoku, because we only need to understand how the last group of techniques work, the hidden subsets. These hidden subsets are very similar to naked subsets, and in fact, there are also 3 techniques within the hidden subsets, which are hidden pairs, hidden triples, and hidden quadruples. So I'm going to show you. Let's start with the hidden pairs first. If in a house there are 2 candidates that only appear in 2 cells, then all the other candidates in those 2 cells can be deleted. As always, you're going to see it with an example. Look at this box and focus on candidates 4 and 7. If you look closely, there are only 2 cells within the entire box that have those 2 candidates. That is, eventually, one of those cells is going to be a 4 and the other is going to be a 7. Even so, this cell has more candidates. That makes the 4-7 pair harder to see, but since we've already identified it and we know that those cells can only have a 4 or a 7, we can delete those other candidates that are not part of a pair. Again, make sure you fully understand how hidden pairs work before continuing, because the techniques that follow are basically the same, but with more numbers. For example, hidden triples. If in a house there are 3 candidates that only appear in 3 cells, then all the other candidates in those 3 cells can be deleted. In other words, the same thing happens as with hidden pairs, only now with 3 boxes and 3 candidates. For example, in this row, you can see a hidden triple. Notice how candidates 5, 6, and 7 are only in 3 cells, but since they all have more candidates, it's harder to see. So as we've already learned, only 5, 6, or 7 can be in those cells, so we can delete all the other candidates that aren't part of that triple. And now that you know what hidden triples are, it's time for you to learn the last basic technique, hidden quadruples. If in a house there are 4 candidates that only appear in 4 cells, then all the other candidates in those 4 boxes can be deleted. More of the same, and although they may be a little harder to see, they can still happen. For example, in this column, we can see a hidden quadruple. You can see how candidates 3, 4, 8, and 9 are only in 4 cells. So, as we saw, it doesn't make any sense to have more candidates in any of them. That's why we're going to delete all the extra candidates, and with this, you've learned all the basic Sudoku techniques in less than 15 minutes. But what happens if, even though you know all these techniques, you still feel like you need more to be able to solve your most difficult puzzles? Well, you need to learn more advanced techniques. That's why I've made a bunch of new videos with new techniques that any beginner player can learn to take the next step and become an advanced Sudoku player. These techniques will be available on my YouTube channel over the next few months, so subscribe to this channel if you haven't already and click the bell icon so you don't miss any of these techniques. Practice these basic techniques a lot, and I'll see you soon with a series of videos that I know you are going to love.